Hi, welcome to TorahAllegory.org. Today we're going to start with day 4 of creation, Genesis. Obviously, we're doing this from an allegorical point of view. I hope you enjoy it. Let's start. So we're discussing Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. First, I'm going to read the verse in Hebrew, then I'm going to chant it. It's not chanting according to trope. This is my own way of chanting it. I'm going to do this a little bit for fun. I hope you enjoy it. First, to read it. ויאמר אלוהים יהי מאורות ברקיע השמים להבדיל בין היום ובין הלילה ויהיו לאותות ולמועדים ולימים ושנים. ויאמר אלוהים יהי מאורות ברקיע השמים להבדיל בין היום ובין הלילה ויהיו לאותות ולמועדים ולימים ושנים. The regular translation of that, what we refer to as the Peshat, or the clear translation, is, and God was saying, there shall be luminaries in the expanse of the heavens to distinguish between the day and the night, and they will be for signs and for appointed times and for days and years. There are three words I want to discuss here to start off. First, there's this word luminaries, me'orot. Me'orot is the plural, the singular is ma'or. It comes from the noun or, which is light. A luminary is something that sheds light. It is said that it's going to be placed, these luminaries are going to be placed in the expanse of the skies, or the expanse of the heavens. The word for expanse is rakia. Now, allegorically, rakia represents an expanse of different things in experience that are made distinct. If you go to a previous slide, I believe it was day 2, where this word is mentioned, you'll see that there's two words in Hebrew. There's rakia and there's rikia. And rikia is used in the Talmud to refer to people that are distinguished. So allegorically, this is an expanse of things that are distinct or distinguished. The word for skies or heavens is shemayim. It comes from a verb shum. Shum is not used in the Torah or in the Tanakh, but it is a Semitic word that is used other places in Jewish writings. It literally means to put place, impose, or label, and I've been through this a number of times. You can look and see that there's different meanings of this root in Hebrew, Arabic, Syriac, Akkadian, and then there's the related word theme or seam in a more modern pronunciation, which means to put place and arrange. Basically, the word for heavens or skies means the arrangement that is in the sky. And allegorically, it represents an arrangement of opportunities that God puts before us in our lives. So the expanse of the heavens or the expanse of the skies represent distinct things in our experience of all of the things that are put, placed, and arranged before us by God for us to engage. And to put luminaries in that is to say that there will be distinct things within everything that is placed before us, all the arrangement of opportunities that help shed light on our experience to make things clearer for us. So obviously, I expect that you've been watching the previous videos to this, and you'll know that at the very beginning in day 1, God created the heavens and the heavens represent all of these opportunities. The earth represents our way of running towards these opportunities. And the earth was tohu vavohu. The earth was, the regular normal translation would be unformed and void. It's not a very good translation. A better translation would be still and disordered. But when it refers to a person, and allegorically it is referring to a person, it basically means dumbfounded and confused. So God creates all of these opportunities, places them, arranges them before us, and our initial reaction is to be dumbfounded and confused. And so the days of creation is a way of gradually making these opportunities more distinct, making them more clear for us so that we can engage them. So here again, we are on day 4, and we have in this expanse of things that are made distinct of all of the opportunities that are placed before us, things that are shedding light so that we can better understand what are these opportunities and how we can engage them. So then a translation of this first part of this verse would be, There shall be things that shed light or enlighten, in or with the expansive things made distinct of the many things put forth in experience. And these, obviously, as I said, represent points of divine guidance, because Elohim means God's guidance, that are found in our experience, that enlighten or shed light for each person about those experiences, about the opportunities that are found in experience. The next part of the verse, Lahavdil bein hayom uvein halayla, in order to separate between the day and the night. The allegory here is in order to distinguish or draw distinctions between what causes a stirring in experience, that's what the word for day literally means, and a time of languishing, that's what the word for night actually means. So again, if the goal here is for us to engage our experiences, for God to create opportunities and experiences for us, and yet all of those, the grand total of those opportunities are overwhelming for us, and our response to that overwhelm of experience is to be dumbfounded and confused, so then God is now putting luminaries, shedding light for us, making these things clear for us, so that we know what those things are that are meant to stir us up and get us going, and to make a distinction between that and our languishing and our not engaging experience. The last part of this verse is V'hayu le'otot u'lemo'adim u'leyamim v'shanim. One thing that you should notice at the very get-go is that it says, and they will be for signs and for appointed times and for days, and then the word for is missing, and then it says, and years. And there's a reason for that that I'll try to expound upon. But let's look at each one. So the word for signs is otot. It comes from the singular ot. It literally means a pointing out of things. That's what a sign does. It points things out. It comes from the verb ava, or in very ancient pronunciation, awa, which means to point out. It also means to desire. The verb actually means to point to things that exist that you want or desire. But here, we're just going to use that the word ot, which comes from it, means pointing things out. And so again, we're talking about luminaries. We're talking about things in our experience that point the way, shed light and point the way. So they're going to be for signs. They're going to point the way. The next one is for appointed times. Now this word, you'll see here I say for times of lingering. And actually that should have been on the allegorical side, not on the literal side. The literal side is for appointed times, but that's what that word means. It means times of lingering. The word is mo'ed. It comes from the verb ya'ad, which means to endure, to spend time together, and to assemble. So holidays in Judaism are mo'adim. They're times of assembly, times of people lingering. But again, since we're talking about the allegory and we're talking about luminaries, things shedding light upon our experience, we have signs pointing the way, and we have times of mentally lingering on what there is to see in our experience. So we can mentally process it so that so the shedding light can be useful, can be functional for us. The next one is for days. That's the word yamim. The word yamim it's a plural that comes from the singular yom. It literally means what causes a stirring up. It comes from the verb hama, which means to stir up. And then the last one is years, shani. So the singular here is shana, and that comes from a verb, shana, which means to repeat, sharpen, and change. But that verb, and I didn't put it here, comes from the verb ana, and ana means to impose. So if you're going to sharpen something, you're imposing yourself, but you have to impose yourself repeatedly to sharpen something. You can't just do it once. That doesn't sharpen anything. So it really is to impose, to repeat, to sharpen, and to change. And I believe on the next slide, I'll discuss why the word for is missing. If not, I'm going to have to come back and do it again. Well, it wasn't on the next slide, so I'll tell you now. So the verb says, and they will be. And then it says for, and then it does not have the for, but just put the, and they will be. So they will be repetitive. They will be sharpening, imposed, and repetitive. These signs, these times of lingering on the information, these things that stir you up, they will be there, and they will be repetitive and sharp, and they will be imposed. So let's look at the next verse, Genesis 1:15. V'hayu lemeorot birakia hashamayim. V'hayu lemeorot birakia hashamayim laha'ir al haaretz v'yehi chen. So the definition here is that they will be regarded as luminaries in the expanse of the heavens or skies. It's the same word. The allegory here is they will be things shedding light or enlightening within the expanse of things and experience made distinct of the many things put forth in experience. So these different signs and the opportunities to mentally linger and the things that stir us up that are repetitive and sharp and imposing, they will shed light on our experience. The next part of the verse, laha'ir al haaretz, in order to shed light upon the earth. But this word, earth, as we've said before, represents a person's way of disposing oneself to experience. So allegorically, this is in order to shed light or enlighten concerning a person's way of disposing oneself in experience. So these luminaries, these lights that shed light, their purpose is to provide clarity for us, because with that clarity, we can engage experience. In the absence of that clarity, we cannot engage experience. However, this verse ends with V'yehi chen, and it was so. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, this word chen, so, comes from the verb kun, which means to be fixed in place, stand firm, set firmly, made permanent. In a sense, it literally means in the manner that is firmly set. How should I do this? So, the way that is set. But unfortunately, allegorically, this means that the person is firmly set and rigid. So God is presenting us with all of this information, the information that is intended to help us see the opportunities that are in front of us so that we can engage. But our reaction, based on the allegory of this small phrase in this verse, was to be rigid, to be firmly set, and not to engage experience. So God provides us with all this guidance, and we are rigid. Why are we rigid? Well, at the very beginning, we knew that the earth was tohu vavohu, that the earth was, again, dumbfounded and confused. And with that, we don't know what to do. And so we're rigidly fixed and firm. So here we are now with the next verse, verse 16. V'ya'as Elohim et shnei hameorot hagadolim et hamaor hagadol lememshelet hayom ve'et hamaor hakaton lememshelet halayla ve'et hakochavim. So I don't have a translation here, but I'll just translate it. So God was making the two luminaries, the two big luminaries. The large luminary for the word memshala is a dominion, for the dominion of the day, and the smaller luminary for the dominion of the night, and the stars. So let's look at the very first part of this. V'ya'as Elohim et shnei hameorot hagadolim. So again, and God was making the two great luminaries, or the two big luminaries. The word gadol, which is this adjective for great or large, comes from the verb gadal. Now, if you know Hebrew, you know that gadal means to be large, to grow up, to raise up, to rear, to increase in size, to magnify. However, rarely used in the Torah, it also means to make braids, to make hair braids. So I have here Numbers 6:5, and it says, and I'm having a hard time seeing it, so it says gadel, there we go, gadel, pera, sa'ir, rosho. So this means that he will braid the disheveled locks of the hair of his head. So this word means to braid, and actually it initially means to braid. It does not initially mean to grow larger, but when you make braids, you're making something larger. So the word actually means to cut across. It comes from verb gud, which means to cut across, and that's how we make braids. I'll use my hands. We do this, right? This is how we make braids, whether we're making hair braids or we're making challah braids. You cut across one way or the other, back and forth, and this is how you make a braid, and this is the initial meaning of this verb. And because when you make a braid, things get bigger, it then comes to mean to grow larger, to grow up, to raise, increase in size, and magnify. In other Semitic languages, it does not have this meaning. In other Semitic languages, it actually means to weave an argument. So in Syriac, it means to compose words artfully, make intricate plans. In Arabic, it means to debate, bicker, contest, and dispute. So it's very interesting that we have this sense of what this word means, but it means so much more. In the next slide, we will see that the word mashal is used. Mashal is where we get the word memshelet from, the dominion. And that word also, in addition to meaning control, also means to describe and express. And I have written here, it represents a process of shedding light and enlightening a person about their behavior, consisting of elaborate weaves of guidance and information, whose intent is to debate, contest with an individual who is behaving rigidly firm. So moving on to the next section of this verse, Et ha'ma'or hagadol lememshelet hayom, vet ha'ma'or hakaton lememshelet halayla, vet ha'kochavim. So the large luminary for the dominion of the day, the small luminary for the dominion of the night, and the stars. I'm going to have to pause and just show you why I keep on looking down. And if you hear this noise, what's going on here? We've got this new little puppy here, and he's obviously teething. And so he's making a little noise. So if I look down every once in a while, please excuse me. And if you hear chewing noises, it's because of this guy. Back to our video, sorry. Okay, so the great luminary for the dominion of the day, small luminary for the dominion of the night, and the stars. So again, this word memshelet, dominion, realm, dimension, comes from this verb mashal. The word mashal has two distinct meanings. One, it means to handle, control, exert power over, but it also means to draw out prolonged and elaborate descriptions and to express. The book of Proverbs comes from this root, mashal, mashlim. So it evolved from the verb mashah, which means to draw out and handle, which also evolved from the word mush, which means to feel and grope and handle. So that's why we have this. We have this. It's a drawing out. So when you draw out, you handle and control. You're drawing out with your hand. You're handling, you're controlling, you're exerting power, but you're also drawing out these elaborate descriptions. So this is consistent with what I was saying before about the word gadol, that comes from gadal, which can also mean to weave an argument or to weave words artfully or things like that. So both of these words in this verse have this other dimension, this dimension of, and again, we're talking about luminaries, this dimension of how do we shed light? Well, we shed light by weaving an argument, by weaving a discussion, by weaving words together artfully, to say to a person, well, maybe this is what you should be doing, or that's what you should be doing. And again, with this word for dominion, we have, again, drawing up prolonged and elaborate descriptions and to express things. This is part of weaving that argument so that it is a dimension of verbal influence and persuasion. And that is consistent, once again, with these luminaries that are meant to shed light on our experience. So finishing off this verse, we have, at the end, it says, Et ha-kochavim, which is, and the stars. So the word, the singular of the word kochavim is kochav, but if you look at the other Semitic languages, it's actually kav-kav, or if we said it with sort of a Hebrew spin, it would be kav-kav. And that is a doubling of the root kavah, which means to extinguish in Hebrew, and to be dull or to fade in Arabic, but kavah evolved from kawa, which we would pronounce kavah nowadays also, but kawa in the past, and that literally means to impress a point. The Hebrew kavah means to cauterize or burn, to impress a point. So these are many small impressions. So again, so God's guidance is creating luminaries that shed light on our experience, that wave artful words of argument and debate, and that influence us through their words. There's the greater luminary that teaches us about the bigger things, and I think we're going to get that in one of the next slides, and the smaller one that teaches us about the smaller things when we're not quite able to fully function. And then there's the stars, which represents small impressions. So these are how we get enlightened in our lives. Big arguments, smaller arguments, and many, many small impressions. So here is the final allegorical translation of this verse, and God's guidance was making the repetitive imposition of the things in experience that shed light and enlighten, those of interwoven argument. The enlightenment, the one of woven complexity, for the dimension of verbal influence and persuasion associated with what causes a stirring in experience, and the enlightenment, the one of subtlety, the smaller one, for the dimension of verbal influence and persuasion associated with the time of languishing and the many small impressions. So when God, through God's guidance, is trying to shed light on our experience, he's doing that with verbal arguments. And there are verbal arguments for those times when we're being stirred up in experience. That's the daytime. And there's the verbal arguments for when we're languishing and we're not doing anything. And then there's also smaller impressions. Moving on to verse 17. V'yitain otam Elohim b'rakia hashemayim laha'ir al haaretz. V'yitain otam Elohim b'rakia hashemayim laha'ir al haaretz. The Peshat translation, the regular translation, and God was putting them into the expanse of the heavens in order to shed light upon the earth. As we've discussed many times before, the word for earth is eretz. It's earth, it's land. It literally means what is run upon and crushed. Allegorically, it represents the way a person runs or disposes themselves in experience. The reason why this is true allegorically is because the initial root here is roots, to run. There's a variant that comes from roots, which is ratzah, which also means to run. In biblical Hebrew, it means to show favor. In modern Hebrew, it means to want. From that verb, from that variant of the verb, of the initial root, there's a noun artzut, which means a person's disposition or the way a person runs in life. And so wherever we see eretz, we're allegorically seeing artzut because they are of similar form. And they are of similar etymology and similar meaning. So, again, allegorically, this verse, in God's guidance, was putting them into the expanse of the things made more distinct, of the many things put forth in experience, in order to shed light and enlighten concerning the person's way of disposing oneself in experience. The luminaries are there amidst our experience. In other words, they are bright lights amidst all of the opportunities of our experience, to give us better understanding of these opportunities, to give us a better understanding of how we can run to these opportunities so we can engage these experiences, to give us a better understanding when we're languishing, which is nighttime, why we're not running to these things. Moving on to verse 18. V'limshol bayom u'valayla u'lahavdil bein ha'or u'vein ha'choshech v'yar Elohim ki tov. So the regular translation of this is, let me sing it. V'limshol bayom u'velayla u'lahavdil bein ha'or u'vein ha'choshech v'yar Elohim ki tov. The translation, and to exert control over the day and over the night, and to distinguish between the light and the darkness. And God was seeing that it was good. Since most of these words we've gone over, just the allegory of this is, and to draw out prolonged and elaborate descriptions with what causes a stirring up in experience and in times of languishing, and to distinguish between what is lit up, of what emanates of experience, and the person's hedging in and holding back. God is placing opportunities before us. Unfortunately, because we feel overwhelmed by the immense amount of opportunities that are there, we are not always engaging. We do a lot of hedging in. We do a lot of holding back. And so the luminaries are there to help us see our way, to show us this is what we should be doing, to show us, try to understand why you're not doing what you should be doing, and to have these small impressions, as mentioned in the previous verse, to guide us along the way. So the final aspect of verse 18, V'yar Elohim ki tov, and Elohim was seeing that it was good, and God was seeing that it was good. So allegorically, what we do with this verse, and it's repeated multiple times in the first chapter of Genesis, is that we change the vowels around. So instead of V'yar, we see it as V'yera. V'yera is the passive. It means to be seen or to appear. And since Elohim generally used to mean God, but literally means a source of guidance. And it can refer to God, it can refer to multiple gods or the pantheon of multiple gods. It can refer to a council of human judges. It can refer to a council of angels. But what it really means is guidance. And so it's God's guidance coming from the verb lawa, modern pronunciation lava. And so V'yar Elohim kitov allegorically is, and God's guidance was appearing. And then we have this section because it was good. And the word good, it means good, but obviously in English we have two words. We have good and well. You do things well. It's an action. It's an adverb, right? Good is an adjective. But the word well obviously comes up from the idea of to well upward. But if you look here, and this has been mentioned before about the word good, it also has to do with pressing down into something and then a welling up as a response to that. So there are these other roots, tabal, tabah, tabah, tavor, and these all mean to press into something and the subsequent welling up that results of that. So allegorically, God's guidance was appearing because it was welling upward, and it was welling upward because we were pushing into it. And here now is our final verse, Genesis 1:19. Wehi erev vihi voker yom revi'i. Wehi erev vihi voker yom revi'i. And there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. As mentioned before, the word erev, evening, literally means a time of mixing. It's related to a root that also means to confuse. Allegorically, it represents the person's confusion that they get when God's guidance wells upward, right? With all of this overwhelm of opportunities. But the word boker, which means morning, comes from the verb levaker, which means to investigate. So that allegorically represents a person's making an investigation. So this day, all of the days represent emerging amounts of guidance coming from God to help us engage our experience. Initially, there's confusion, but then there's an opportunity to make an investigation. This day is a fourth day. The word fourth here is revi'i. The word for four is arba. It comes from the verb rava, which means to lie down, to spread out the limbs, and to copulate. It literally means to spread out in all four directions. It's used multiple times throughout the Torah, the Tanakh, to represent an inundation, a flooding. So we have 40 days and 40 nights of rain for Noah's Ark. Moshe spends 40 days and 40 nights with God up in the mountain in Mount Sinai, Har Sinai. The Israelites are made to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. All of these represent an inundation of experience and information. So the allegory here is, and there was a time of confusion, and there was a time of investigation, a time causing a stirring, one of inundation of divine guidance. I hope you're having a wonderful day.